So, welcome along everyone to this online BTRM information session. Some of you that I can see here from around the world. We've got some from South America, from India, from Europe, UK. So it's good to have such a diverse bunch of people here, and welcome along. I hope this proves really informative and useful for you. My name's Jeff Brown, and I'm basically responsible for everything that is not to do with the content of the program. So Moorad is going to interrupt me at a certain point to really nail down on the syllabus of the program and what knowledge and skills you'll acquire on the program, and I'll talk about everything else. At the end, we're also going to have a Q&A session. So once Moorad and I have finished delivering our presentations, we'll open it up to questions and answers. Okay, so. Now, why am I not able to page down? Here we go. Okay. So, what are some of the topics that we're going to take you through during the course of this presentation? The history and evolution of the BTRM, which started out in 2014. It's come a hell of a long way since then. What is the BTRM and why is it beneficial? That's really something that Moorad is going to be talking about. Who teaches on the BTRM? It is a world-renowned faculty. There are some very recognizable names. So again, Moorad will elaborate on that. Who are the profiles that come through the BTRM program, both on a professional and what are their professional backgrounds, what are their academic backgrounds? What's the BTRM journey? It starts today. Hopefully, in some cases for you, it started before today if you've read the brochure or been through our website. And the journey will be from today right through to the end of the program and beyond. Moorad will then break down the syllabus for you. We're going to talk about the certification of the BTRM, who accredits the BTRM. He'll take you through some of the testimonials over the years. We'll talk also about BTRM Alumni, which is incredibly important, and the study partner program for those of you who would like to study with someone else, and we'll also talk about the help desk. Okay, so I'll hand you over to Moorad.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. May I just echo what you said? It's good to see people from all around the world, as we always do right from the start, getting involved in the BTRM. So do I have control of these slides, or can I just ask you to move them on each time, Jeff? Is that okay? I'll just ask you. Okay. Oh, right, I do. Good. Excellent. Right. So there we go. Yes, I do. Thank you. Sorry, forgive me. You'd think we'd be more professional guys, right? Okay. So started in 2014. Cohort 17 is about to start in 2 weeks' time. 6-month program, as you know. It has been it's been adding steadily to it itself, if you like. And in fact, later on, we're going to talk about that accreditation and the certification, because now we are actually presented jointly by ourselves and University of Northwestern Switzerland. So I'm going to come back to that very shortly. Next slide, please. No, I've told on. We decided we had it. There you go. Now, what's it actually about? Now, interestingly enough, we've had a bit of a favor done for us, really. We've had a real big favor done for us by the very kind board of directors and executive senior management of Silicon Valley Bank, because as we would have observed just in the last 2 weeks, their complete indifference to managing balance sheet risk using traditional principles of ALM, asset liability management, has been their undoing. Whichever assessment you want to look at, and tomorrow we are presenting, the BTRM is presenting a webinar on Silicon Valley Bank failure, lessons relearned. We've got that tomorrow at 2 o'clock UK time. It's a BTRM webinar. Everyone is welcome. And what they've done for us is reminded everyone that asset liability management is a core discipline in banking, the one that's got to be applied by every bank. And if you ignore core principles, traditional 200, 300, 400, 500-year-old principles of asset liability management, then you are taking risks that you don't actually need to. And this is what we've been doing from the start, delivering not just ALM discipline as a profession, as a professional qualification, but also overall balance sheet risk management. That's what the BTRM is about. It is basically teaching and instructing and demonstrating to individuals, and we don't mean junior individuals. This is a graduate level qualification. In the UK, we call it level 7, i.e. master's equivalent. It's a graduate level qualification that essentially demonstrates in practical terms to those employed in the industry, practitioners, everything to do with balance sheet risk management and ALM. It's practitioner-led, practitioner-developed, and practitioner-orientated. This is not an academic qualification, although we're proud of our academic connection with the University of Northwestern Switzerland. It is a practitioner's qualification, and you'll see when you look at the brochure, one of the testimonials that I'm most happy, most gratified at receiving was one by an early alumnus who said it was fantastic how I'd learn something on a Wednesday evening watching the lecture, attending the lecture, and then the next day I'd go and apply it in my day job. And this gentleman worked in the Treasury function. But as we'll see later, actually this is for anyone within the balance sheet risk management space: finance, risks, first line defense, second line defense, third line defense, anyone connected with bank balance sheet risk management. That's what the BTRM is about. It's aimed at them. Key benefits: UK standard balance sheet risk qualification with global reach. Wherever you are in the world, you will be able to take the exam. The exam is delivered live. There is a live lecture streamed over the internet, so you can watch it live if you're not based in London. I mean, we encourage students to attend in person, but that's tough if you're 7 or 8 time zones away. So you can watch the lecture live online, or you can watch the recording at your own time. Okay, so you can take the qualification from anywhere in the world. The examination is sat for non-UK students at your desktop on a specific day worldwide, the same day worldwide, but it's from your desktop. So you can qualify from anywhere in the world. Practitioner orientated, as I said, it's been developed and is taught by experienced practitioners. Even though 1 or 2 of our faculty have current positions in academia, I assure you they had 30 years history working in banks, senior positions, ALCO members, before they moved to academia. Excuse me. So there is that, the faculty experience, and then lifelong learning. We present things like webinars and continuing professional development so that our alumni can benefit from this ongoing keeping up to date of what's happening in the marketplace that's relevant to their profession. Now, again, I mentioned them, and I will now spend a bit of time on it. University of Northwestern Switzerland. They are our partners, our official partners. They accredit the qualification. Your certificate, and I'm going to make an assumption that you all passed the exam. Your certificate, when you have successfully sat the exam, is presented to you by both BTRM and the University of Northwestern Switzerland. Okay, so in other words, this is something that you show to any current or a prospective employer. It's a university award. Okay, University of Northwestern Switzerland, highly regarded, headquartered in Basel in Switzerland. I mean, can you think of anywhere more appropriate than the home of the Bank for International Settlements, awarding you your certificate in Treasury risk management? So we're very proud of that. It's now on the 3rd cohort where this has been happening. So it's not new. It's now that it's kicked off in cohort 15, and now cohort 70 is kicking off in a couple of weeks' time. And we're proud to say the philosophy of FHNW, University of Northwestern Switzerland, mirrors that of the BTRM in its emphasis on knowledge transfer, excellence in educational teaching, practice, and research. The faculty, 25, actually it's a few more than 25 now. We're just under 30 lecturers on the faculty, and it's a veritable United Nations of faculty on that I'm very proud and privileged to work with. They've all been they're all practitioners from different banks. We've got about 7 or 8 different languages represented on the faculty, although I should emphasize the teaching is all in English, for better or for worse. The teaching's all in English, but we do have faculty from all around the world. They have experience in large banks, small banks, systemically important banks, specialist banks, niche banks, digital banks, challenger banks. We've got the whole gamut of experience. They all have practitioner experience within balance sheet risk management. Some of them, like Peter Heisenhart, who I worked with at JP Morgan, oh gosh, more than 20 years ago now, 25 years ago, we have front office money markets experience. He was in commercial paper and asset-backed commercial paper dealing at JP Morgan a long time ago. So we come from all different spectrums of the banking experience. I just want to highlight at the top there next to me, Chris Westcott. He's our head of faculty, and Edward Bass, who had 15 years at Lehman Brothers, who is our deputy head of faculty. The others you'll get to know during the course of the lectures. How many students have we had over the years? It's growing every year. Cohort 17 is underway from next month, as I said. If you look at the student profile, they come from many different parts of the bank. We have had everyone from people with just 2 or 3 years experience all the way up to the C-suite. It's not uncommon for C-suite, CRO, Chief Risk Officer, Chief Financial Officer to attend the BTRM. I remember a CRO from the UK subsidiary of a foreign bank taking our course because the PRA, the UK regulatory authority, when approving his appointment as CRO of this bank, it's a subsidiary of a foreign bank, but here in the UK, they said one of the areas we'd expect you to have training on is balance sheet risk management, because he had an exclusively credit risk background. So he didn't have any practical experience in or exposure to ALM issues, liquidity, funding, capital management, etc. So he took the BTRM and showed to the PRA, there you go, I've got the BTRM qualification, and they approved his appointment. So that was a CRO, just one example. We do have C-suite and all the way down from that. If you look there on the profiles, you'll see they come from all manner of the bank: front office, first line defense, second line defense, third line defense, treasury, finance, risk, money markets, internal audit. Their degree backgrounds are many and varied. There is a preponderance of degree backgrounds in banking and finance, economics, things like that, but that's there's no specific requirement. An undergrad degree is recommended as your experience, but it's not a requirement to get on the program. I see a question. Thank you. All I can see is R, so forgive me, I can't address you by your full name. How much does mathematics, calculus, if any, haunt us in this 6-month journey? I like the use of the word haunt. It's a numerate. It has a numerate emphasis, but there's no what I'd call quantitative analysis in it. You don't need to be a mathematician to take the degree, and far from it. We emphasize practical skills that you need at the ALCO, the Asset Liability Committee. Now, probably the most quantitative that it gets is on Module 4 when we talk about interpolating the yield curve. Okay, that's very straightforward statistics. It's not advanced mathematics. In answer to your question, I don't think you'll be haunted by too much mathematics. There isn't any requirement to understand or apply calculus or stochastic calculus in any part of the examination. Okay, so it's much more, it's a combination of numeracy that's required to understand simple calculations like liquidity coverage ratio, and then more qualitative assessment on that you would need when attending an asset liability committee meeting. Okay, so I hope that's answered your question. Very proud of our global profile. Each cohort, the number of countries that we grey out or shade out on the world map increases. As you can see, we've had students take the qualifications from all around the world. Something we're very proud of. There's always the vast majority are always outside the UK, which is fair enough because we're aiming this at around the world. There's no emphasis on any one jurisdiction. And as I said at the start, it's ALM, asset liability management, is a core discipline of every bank. And that's a statement of fact. There's no opinion or analysis required for that. Every bank, well, institution that undertakes banking needs to apply and implement an asset liability management regime as part of its basic banking operations, risk management. That's universal for every bank. It doesn't matter what your business model is, what your customer franchise is, what your product suite is, whether you use derivatives or not, whether you use capital markets funding or not. every bank has to manage the balance sheet for ALM risk. So that's why we're able to say it's a universal qualification. It's something that is relevant, genuinely relevant to every bank in the world. Now contrast that, I'm not going to name any other professional qualifications, but contrast that with the amount of professional qualifications around the world, some of them with much older histories than ours, that have a module on derivatives valuation, for example. Okay, now what's wrong with derivatives valuation? Nothing whatsoever. We have a lecture ourselves on it. However, it's just one lecture. The number of banks in the world that actually use derivatives, would you like to hazard a guess? It's not even in double figures. Okay, now some very large banks use derivatives. It runs into trillions of dollars of notional, but the large number, the vast majority of banks around the world don't even use them. So we don't emphasize one particular product over another. We just teach what is universally required of every bank around the world, no matter, irrespective of its business model, how old it is, how new it is, how sophisticated its balance sheet. We talk about the universal principles that all banks have to apply, which goes a long way to explaining why we are able to shade out so many countries on that map of the world. Okay, just a sample of the banks that have sent students to us, sponsored their students to take the qualification. The only thing those firms have got in common is that they're from all around the world. There's no one particular type there. In fact, there are some non-bank institutions there as well. If you look, PwC, SunGard, Wolters Kluwer, these aren't Prometea, these aren't banks, but they recognize the depth of learning, the knowledge, the technical knowledge that's transferred through BTRM. So they're happy to send their people to us. But there's quite a good selection there of vastly different banks. You've got regulatory authorities, you've got multinational development banks, you've got straightforward commercial banks, you've got globally systemically important banks. Everything's there in the picture. I'm looking to see if there is a digital bank. I'll have to come back to that. That's maybe our challenge. But we should add that, because we have had people coming from the new banks.
DBS.
DBS Bank, is that fully digital? Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that very much. Well, there we go. We've got every institution there under the book. Thank you. Okay, BTRM journey, as Mr. Brown said, starts here with this information evening. The in-person ones obviously limited those who are based in the UK, where you can meet one or more members of the faculty. You apply. We will send you your course materials before the start of the program. We'll have the primer, which is an introductory lecture, which is called the primer because it basically assumes everyone has no experience whatsoever. So we get everyone up to a minimum standard of understanding of bank balance sheet risk, and then we take it on from there. And then there's 5 modules over 23 weeks, where we have about 30 odd lectures. In some weeks you get 1 lecture, in some other weeks you get 2 lectures. And at the end of that, of course, there is the examination. How is the program delivered? Well, in the first instance, through your materials, which you will receive at your request, either hard copy or as ebooks, your course textbook, your course handbook, and then, of course, the lectures, the live lectures or recorded lectures delivered in person in London, but online for everybody else. We've got the PowerPoint slides, the student handbook, I should mention, which is basically a summary of all the lectures. So you've got that either in hard copy or as in a PDF file. We'll always have illustrations from the real world. This, as I said at the start, this is not an academic qualification. Although, again, reiterate, we're proud of our academic connection. But this is not an academic qualification. This is a practitioner qualification. Everything that you read in the handbook or in the core text is relevant to your day job at the bank that you're working at. Depending on the lecture in question, there will be policy templates for you to take back to your bank and compare with the policies you already have. We're quite keen on that. We'll give you templates of good practice for various policies. It could be the funds transfer pricing policy or the capital management policy. That's for you to benchmark with your own firm's policies on this. In some cases, there are spreadsheets available that, again, you can do the same for. Ad hoc webinars we do throughout the year on relevant topics. As I mentioned, we've got one tomorrow on the Silicon Valley Bank debacle. And of course, the lifelong learning library. And I haven't mentioned, I've saved the best for last, the student forum. The student forum is basically your talking shop. Online, you can you log on there at any time. You can post a question or a comment or an observation. You'll get a if it is a question, you'll get a response from a member of faculty within 24 hours. It's simply there for you to also make any observations or any comments or questions at all. You could talk about your opinion on what happened at Credit Suisse, for example. The student forum is something we're very excited about because it's the way you engage with the faculty, either before, during, or after a lecture. Well, during the lecture, it would be through the chat on WebEx, but before or after the lecture, you can log on to the forum, post your comment or question or observation, and we can have a discussion going on from there. And we've had every cohort, we've always have some lively discussions of very specific topics. It could be to do with things like funds transfer pricing, or what do you think of the assumptions behind the liquidity coverage ratio metric, or something even more arcane, you know, the metrics for monitoring your intraday liquidity risk exposure. Everything within the syllabus and everything without the syllabus is in scope for discussion on the forum. And the bit at the bottom, lifelong learning. Once you have finished at the BTRM, the Alumni Forum is open to you. So your access to other students, past students, current students, and the faculty doesn't disappear after you got your qualification. We've had people posting on the Alumni Forum who took cohort 5 or 6. So that's 6-7 years ago. You know, they were students, and then something will come up. They'll have a question or a query. They'll post it on the forum. They'll get a response from the faculty. So it's a lifelong learning access that you have to the faculty for as many months or years after you've taken the qualification that you wish to engage with us. So we're very excited about that and very happy to be able to make that available to students. And we can't emphasize it enough. The learning doesn't stop. It's a pity that the board and the executive at Silicon Valley Bank weren't aware of this, but the learning doesn't stop once you've finished your qualification. You can carry on raising observations or queries or questions or challenges throughout your professional career, and the BTRM is there to work with you on that whenever you wish. Okay, 23 weeks of lectures, 5 modules after the initial primer. There is an online multiple choice test, 20 questions after each module. That's just to give you some comfort that you're maintaining progress throughout the 23 weeks of lectures. The online tests are multiple choice, but they don't form part of your final mark, and the written exam is not multiple choice. The examination is a traditional sight unseen 3-hour exam paper. You take it on your desktop, but it's essays. It's short form or long form essays or calculations that you are writing out as if you were in an old-fashioned examination hall with a pencil and paper. In fact, UK-based students do sit the exam in an exam hall under traditional conditions with pen and paper. Everyone else outside the UK will sit it on their desktop, but it's the same exam for everybody. No multiple choice. It's old-fashioned. It's not like taking, well, again, I'm not going to name any other professional qualifications, but I'm sure you're familiar with some professional qualifications where the examination is all in the form of multiple choice. I'm not saying there's anything wrong or good or bad or right about it. It's just not the way we examine the BTRM. But the online tests, the online module tests are multiple choice. Again, just to check your progress. You need to have passed all 5 of them to be eligible to sit the exam. So they are to be taken seriously in that respect, because a failure in the multiple choice test and one is allowed a resit means you wouldn't be able to sit the exam. So they are to be taken seriously, but they don't count towards your final mark. On the exam, only the exam counts towards your final mark. Okay, just a quick run through of all the modules. If you look on the website or you get our download our brochure, you'll see this in much more detail. Module 1, traditional core ALM principles. Okay, and of course we have to include the Basel guidance because they're international rules on capital and liquidity. Risk management, so we include that, but it's really the core module to kick off on ALM for banks. Module 2 gets in a bit more detail, but we've also got 1 or 2 standalone lectures. The Treasury operating model is very relevant to your ALM discipline. We talk about the ALCO, the Asset Liability Committee, the most important committee in any bank. We talk about the governance framework for the ALCO, and we also tie in credit risk with ALM. Not something you see discussed very often, actually, how the ALM process and the ALCO also needs to be closely involved with managing credit risk. Module 3, strategic ALM and financial markets. So capital markets, securitization. We could have put the swaps lecture in here, but it sits in module 4, for historical reasons. We've got some standalone lectures on investor relations and credit rating. Why credit rating? Often in my experience, the department in smaller banks, not the large banks, but smaller banks, the department that usually manages the credit rating agency relationship is the Treasury department. So we thought right from the start, from cohort 1, we thought it's relevant for BTRM graduates to be familiar with the credit rating process. The credit rating process of the 3 main public rating agencies, Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, because as I said, in many banks around the world, it's the Treasury function that manages this relationship. Not always the case. Sometimes you have a specialist investor relations team doing this, or in some cases, it's the risk department. But it's there for that reason. We've got a standalone lecture on recovery planning. Actually, resolution planning is no longer part of it. We dropped it from cohort 16. So actually, this slide is just a couple of weeks, a couple of days out of date. We do have a lecture on recovery planning, but resolution planning, because it's usually owned outside of the ALCO process, we've dropped from the lecture. It's quite an in-depth piece of regulation. In fact, you might suggest that it rivals some of the drier subjects in finance for being dry. But recovery planning is more than enough to get round, and we do still have that in the lecture. Although I have a question for you. Why is it that when Silicon Valley Bank failed and Credit Suisse failed and Silicon Valley Bank UK failed, the authorities went straight from unviability to resolution? They didn't bother with the recovery planning process. Yet recovery plans in most banks average about 200 pages worth of dense text. There's a question there for you, but we will still keep it in the lecture for the time being because it's a regulatory requirement. And then the minimum we do in the BTRM is make sure you're aware of all the relevant regulatory requirements. Module 4, the longest one in the program, and for understandable reasons, it's all about liquidity risk management. Very direct lectures on liquidity risk management, plus some connected lectures like the yield curve interpolation lecture. Okay, so the longest module talks about liquidity risk management in some depth, goes into some technical detail. Look down at the bottom there on collateral management. Very important part of bank discipline. Again, whatever country you're in, whatever bank you're working at, the biggest to the smallest, smallest to the biggest, module 4 is probably the most important module for any bank. So again, that's why we've got 7 lectures within it, the longest module in any of the BTRM. And then finally, the last one, capital management, although we do have a standalone lecture on operational risk and ALM, relevant for you to be aware of it, and also policy documentation principles. It's an arcane topic, but wherever you are in any bank, you'll always come across policies, and in many cases in your career, you'll be asked to draft them. So having a standardized approach to that, we think, is relevant to you. There is another topic in there as well that isn't listed on there, but it's very important as well, which is the SREP process. SREP, S-R-E-P, Supervisory Review and Evaluation Process. We do have a lecture on there from Andrea Cremonino, actually, who's with UniCredit, on the SREP process. Wherever you are in the world, you will have an on-site inspection and evaluation of your risk management strength and your balance sheet strength from the supervision team, the central bank or the regulatory authority that supervises you. So again, being familiar with the SREP process is very relevant to the BTRM. So that's also within module 5. Okay, right. So there is, you get a number of textbooks as part of the program. You're also welcome, of course, to look into other texts. And I'm very proud to say that our faculty are published authors, and I'm not just talking about myself here. So Polina Bardeva, who does 2 lectures for us, she's written a book on bank ALM. Michael Eichhorn, who does 2 lectures with us, close friend of mine from my RBS days, currently at Credit Suisse, by the way, so he'll be having an interesting time. He's done a book on reverse stress testing, one of the subjects that he lectures on in the program. And Beata Lubinska, who lectures in module 1. She's written a couple of texts, actually. She's written one on interest rate risk in the banking book, and also the one you've got written, shown there in front of you, ALM optimization. So again, the faculty is I'm proud to say they talk the talk, but they've also walked the walk by writing about their expertise and their experiences in banking and getting it published in the marketplace. So there we go. We've got a number of reference texts, and our faculty have more than one published author. In fact, there's a name going to be added to that. So there's going to be a 5th name from the faculty who's publishing in due course. Right, who recognises the BTRM? Well, already I've mentioned the University of Northwestern Switzerland. That they award you your certificate. It's a graduate level certificate. There's a professional association in the UK, the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment. They recognise it and endorse the CPD, continued professional development associated with it. There is Financial Risk Institute. There is also, it's not on the slide there, but there is also, I should say, the American Bankers Association. Now, the reason that's not on the slide is because they have very strict rules on how anybody can use their logo. So I suppose we should just enter on that slide without putting their logo, American Bankers Association. I'm very proud to say within the last 2 years, the ABA, the American Bankers Association, also recognizes the 300 hours of learning and teaching as CPD, continual professional development for their members. So if you are based in North America, the ABA will also recognizes the BTRM. Right, if you look on the brochure, you'll see some various testimonials. The one there on the top left is the one that's always been my favorite. And he was a very early student, cohort 2 or 3, I think. He was a very early student, and he basically said he loved the way that he could attend a lecture, go back to work the next day, and he would be applying it in his day job. I can't think of a better testimonial for the BTRM, which has always emphasized practitioner value and relevance, than that one. But there's a number of more on the website that you can see if you take a look, and indeed on that slide. So plenty of former students saying nice things about us, which is always welcome. But do have a look when you download the brochure from the website. Okay, I'm going to pass back to Mr. Brown, if I may, Jeff. Are you happy? Any questions, or do you want to take it on from here?
Take it on from here, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this. Moorad, thanks a lot. Very eloquent, as always. Thanks for explaining the syllabus in particular, which is what a lot of you are here to understand in terms of how all of this works. So this is really important. I've been speaking to alumni since September, getting each and everyone's feedback on this program, and it has been a genuinely incredible experience doing that. I joined in September, and that I made that my priority to talk to alumni to find out what their experiences and what their views of the program are. And it's been the feedback has been incredible. We are also on preferred supplier lists with a number of banks. So if you are working for a bank and you're not sure if we're on the preferred supplier list, you can always ask internally or send me an email. But I think the most important thing is to get in touch with some of these guys, whether it's an alumnus from your organization, or whether it's an alumnus from your region, or an alumnus working in a similar role that you're currently working in. What I haven't listed there is an alumnus who's working in a role that you want to perhaps move into. So we're extremely open about this. We're very flexible, and we don't pick and choose the alumni. So it would literally be, if you're looking to speak to alumni from your region, I'll send you a list of names with email addresses, and you get in touch with whoever you want to get in touch with, because we are very confident that the feedback will be honest and positive as well. Okay, so I think that is it, actually. Does anybody have any questions about the program, either about the syllabus or anything outside the syllabus that you want to ask about? There's usually, at this point in these information sessions, there's usually a few questions that come through, but if there isn't, then hopefully you know.
I've just allowed people to unmute. So.
Okay. Here we go. Satya, hello. I've been liaising with you. Okay, so do we
should I take that one, Jeff?
Yeah, go for it. Sure.
Okay, do we have a fixed schedule on the lectures and multiple choice tests at the end of each module? That will be first of all, the timetable will be sent out to all registered students about a week or so before the start of the program, possibly earlier, because it is finalized at least 6 weeks before the start of the cohort, if not longer. So you know, it is sent out as early as possible after the student is registered on the course. It couldn't be earlier than about 4 weeks before, and it wouldn't be later than a week before. So lectures are on a Wednesday evening at 5:30 UK time, and sometimes on a Wednesday and a Monday evening at 5:30 UK time. But of course, they're all recorded. So if you can't catch them live, you watch the recording via your student portal at your own time. So there is a fixed schedule of lectures. But of course, as I said, the beauty of it is you can listen to it in your own time if you can't make the live presentation. The lectures are live and actually, in most cases, in person. We've got a training suite in Canary Wharf in London. But as I said, you can watch them in your own time. You'll want to read. Our recommendation is you do watch the lectures if you haven't caught them live as soon as possible afterwards, because of course the next one follows either on the following Monday or the following Wednesday, so you don't want to fall too far behind, just to help your learning. The multiple choice tests are issued at the end of each module. So in the immediately after the last lecture on a module, you're issued the link to the multiple choice test. Now there's no time limit on them up to a point. You can take them at any time, but they have to be passed. All 5 of them have to have been passed no later than 1 week before the exam. Otherwise, you can't sit the exam. So again, our recommendation is you take them more or less as soon as possible after they're issued, so you don't fall behind in taking them. Okay, I hope that's answered your question. Yeah, well, I don't have any plans to visit the US, not at the moment, no. But one never knows, right? No, I personally don't, but other members of our faculty may well do. But no plans for the time being.
Yeah, we have been running networking events around the world. So you know, from in fact, very recently in January, we ran networking events, not just for BTRM alumni, but anybody who's working in this space or who has an interest in this space joined. And we ran some in South America, we ran some in Africa, we ran some in Europe, in the UK, and they were very successful. So Sathya, we are going to be running networking events in New York. Whether we get over to the West Coast or not, I don't know, but certainly New York is going to be where the big hub is, you know, where most of the banks are. So, yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff.
Pleasure. Any other questions? I think also just, you know, you may not have any questions right now, but if any questions pop up in the coming days or weeks, then you should all have my contact details. So feel free to give me a call, or we can have an email exchange, and I'll do everything I can to answer your questions. But for the time being, does anybody have any more? Okay. I think we're done.
Okay,
Moorad,
thank you
very much.
No, my
Everybody,
pleasure. Thank you
thanks a lot for coming along. Again, I hope this has proved informative, so that you can make a really informed decision. Any questions, feel free to get in touch, and hopefully talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.